We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
He catches that touchdown and you just see like all the eruption of emotion like come from him. And it's like hard not to get involved with the way Madden and some will even call it. If you're not a 49ers fan, or even if you're a Packers fan, like maybe you can go back and look at it now, like less salty because of the Rice thing, because that play should have happened. But you just appreciate like as a human being going through that, like in that moment, like what that probably meant to him, you know, catching that pass.
It's January 99, Packers at Niners. This is Remember That Game, the podcast about sporting events that take you on a journey and maybe chart the path of the zeitgeist. I'm your host, Thomas Emerick, and returning to the program is Rich Hribar of Sharp Football Analysis. Go grab their 2024 football preview. We got the Swami of Konami on to talk about one of the original cheat code quarterbacks, Steve Young.
Yeah, I mean, this game was like I said, kind of like a fulcrum point for me. You know, I grew up in Cleveland, like I'm right outside of Cleveland, and I never had like anyone push the Browns on me, which is crazy because it's like such a Brown city. Like, you know, even though the Cavs have won a championship, you know, like if the Browns win, like the city is gonna like absolutely melt. Like this place is such a Browns area. But my dad was never huge into football, so like I never had it really pushed on me. So when I first started watching football, the Browns would be on at 1 and they would just, you know, run and play defense. The AFC brand of football was like run, play defense. You'd watch like this fist fight game. Like the Bills had like a run there, like where they actually were an AFC team that threw the ball towards the end there. But like in the mid 80s, it was like Kevin Mack, Ernest Biner, pound the football. And then at 4:00, when the Browns were off and the East Coast game was off, you know, you'd only get one game. And then the 49ers would always be on. They'd always be like the 4 p.m. game, the afternoon game. And it was like watching a different sport, like that version of the team, you know? So I got like indoctrinated into like, you know, like how did I not love them as a kid, right? Like the, you know, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and, you know, Roger Craig, and like all these dudes, like it made me fall in love with football. So like was just a 49ers fan, you know, growing up in Cleveland. That's like how the story went, you know, how I did it. And then they were basically good my entire life. I was born in 82. They were good basically up until this season when this game happened.
Spectacular run from the 80s into the 90s. They seemed a little snake bitten with Steve Young, and another animal metaphor. He got the monkey off his back in 94 for the Super Bowl, and they got past the Cowboys finally. But then from there on, every season to here in January 99, they get knocked out by Green Bay, Favre, Holmgren, down double digits, I believe, in 4 of those 5 losses, when you include the regular season. Were you as anxious to see them beat an opponent here against the Packers as you were in that Super Bowl, you know, run in 94? Was the level of anxiety on par?
No, they felt more like an underdog. You know, they were at home in this game because like you said, I mean, at this era, like they were just losing to the Packers. Like they're just like it just was like every year, right? It's like the inverse of what's happened to the Packers 49ers now, like where the 49ers had like this like Aaron Rodgers couldn't beat the 49ers in the playoffs. Like and that's like kind of what it was like. So it felt like a little bit of house money. And I mean, listen, in this game started at the third play of the game, T.O. fumbles like on the third play. It's like, oh, here we go again. Like, like I remember just thinking like, oh, it's here's the same stuff again. Packers go right down and score, and it's just like right off of a turnover. And it was just like, ah, man. And to be fair, like this was a game too. Like there was a ton of turnovers in this game, which is kind of interesting. You know, there's like a lot of big defensive plays. And the 49ers actually didn't like capitalize on as many as theirs as the Packers did in this game. So it like felt like there was a lot of meat left on the bone. Obviously, we'll get to like the ending when we get there. But yeah, it started off the same way. I was just like, oh, here it is again, you know?
Yep. And the T.O. fumble, he'll have quite the roller coaster of a day. Yeah, going into late in the first quarter, the Packers are up 3-0. The Niners have already fumbled early, which tends to be what they do against the Packers, turn the ball over early. And the Packers get the ball back at the 20 after the Niners punt, down 3-0. But then Dorsey Levin's fumble, a fumble recovered by the Niners this time around, and Niners go in and score. Greg Clark touchdown. He gets 2 touchdowns in this game. And the announcers eventually, Pat Summerall and John Madden are like digging him a little bit, like, quite the thespian. It was just fun hearing them call a game because he had those 2 touchdowns where he's pretending to block, like almost falls, and then it leaks open. How much of a joy is it to rewatch like a peak Madden Summerall performance?
Yeah, revisiting this, that was definitely like the hallmark for me. Like I said, I mean, that was like the team that made like I fell in love with, you know, watching football like in the 80s. And they did it for so long. And it was great to realize too, you go back on it, like Madden towards the end of his career, like, and his delivery almost makes him kind of like Luffy sounding in a sense, you know, like, but like like he was sharp, like he knew the game and he was so on top of things. And he even knew things like ancillary things like outside of the game that like he knew. Like there's a point during the broadcast where he literally says like he calls like Holmgren's not coming back to the Packers, like he's not going back there. He's like totally wired in on like the contractual situation for Terrell Owens, you know, like when he has the touchdown, like they're dialing in the call of is great. And he's so good on the offensive line play, like, and you forget about that. We don't get a ton of it, but like Madden was so good at like calling out, Warren, who I work for now, he tweeted when Larry Allen passed away, I think it was like 6 weeks ago or whatever, like 2 months ago. And he did like the 2 minutes of Madden, just like gushing over a Larry Allen clip. And you forget like Madden. Yeah. He was just calling out like great offensive line play. And there was a lot of really good offensive line play in this game because both teams kind of approached. Yeah.
I love hearing Madden talk about big old Grogan.
But both teams kind of approached this game defensively the same way. They were so dialed in and not getting beat vertically, like both teams, that they just let the other team just kind of like punish them on the ground. Both teams were just like running at will in this game. You forget, like you miss some of these old formations because the game is transitioned. Even these West Coast offenses, like, we don't have like the Bill Walsh type of West Coast offense anymore, even though like Andy Reid was on the coaching staff he's like kind of like the last link like to the coaches, the coaching tree in this game, because like the Shanahan system and the McVay system's kind of like bred off of itself. But like you miss some of those formations, like strong eye close and like the near, like where you've got the fullback and running back, lined up neutral next to each other in the backfield. You don't see a lot of these formations anymore that were also running this game and that iteration of the West Coast offense. It was super fun to kind of go back and relive some of that. But Madden and Summerall were it, man. Like they were the group. They let the broadcast breathe. That was like Summerall's thing, right? Like he has a famous call, like be like Aikman, Irvin, touchdown. Like it'd just be like taking a breath in between each thing. But like they used to let the play like breathe. I'm like, I didn't do during that in total response to you.
It's a great combination to have on, and we have it on a great wild card game here. Niners finished shockingly ahead of the 98 Vikings in total offense this season. Packers were a top 5 offense and defense heading in. PF Reference has the Niners number 2 SRS behind the Vikes, but ahead of the Falcons, who would have the number 2 seed here. What a stacked wild card game we have here, even leaving out like the history between these teams.
Playoffs.
And do you remember a more stacked wild card or stacked NFC bracket than here in 98?
This was a great NFL season in general. This is a really good one. There was a lot of different storylines. It was just a really great season overall. There's a lot of just like really good teams. Like you said, that Falcons team was 14-2. Like they were loaded. Granted, maybe that game goes a little bit differently the following week. If Garrison Hearst doesn't have like that catastrophic injury on the first play of the game, but that Vikings team, I mean, I feel like even being a Niners fan, getting robbed of not seeing that Vikings team in the Super Bowl like just felt like, it felt like we missed something, obviously of the Gary Anderson, kind of story, like that follows up like in the playoffs that year for the Vikings, the one missed field goal. But like we wanted this, the Falcons team was good, but they couldn't score like the Broncos could. And we kind of knew that going into that Super Bowl. Like, man, they're just not going to score at that Broncos team. But that Vikings team felt like they could. Like, so it was a bummer missing out on that. And that's why that Super Bowl ended up being kind of the result that we kind of all thought it was going to be.
Passing in the night, unfortunately, with the Vikings and the Broncos. You mentioned Garrison Hearst. So crucial to that Niners team, broke the Niners team rushing record that season. Yeah. And the first half, I believe it was like 12 for like 112 on the ground or something, like keeping the Niners in that, while the Steve Young struggled a bit against Fritz Shermer's defense there in the first half.
Yeah, that was the Steve Young versus the Packers kind of MO for that kind of era. He didn't play great in this game either. Obviously, the final play was an absolute laser beam, but he had a pretty gross interception too. Like after another turnover, like the Packers muffed a punt in the second half of this game, and like the first play, Steve Young throws this like an errant ball like to a defensive lineman, But yeah, I mean, the Garrison Hearst is kind of a wild story, right? Like. He was from that era where like running backs got drafted highly. I think he was the third pick overall that year. He went the same draft as Jerome Bettis. They were both top 10 picks. And he was like thought of like to this point in his career, like as like a unanimous bust. Like he lasted 3 years with the Cardinals, 2 or 3. And like kind of ran out of there. He had like one okay year getting out of there. Then he like went to the Bengals and was okay. And then the 49ers picked him up and he was like their best running back since Ricky Watters. So it was like the first like legitimate running back they had since Ricky Watters. And then they went on like that nice run where like, you get Charlie Garner and then Frank Gore comes after that. It was looking real good. But he's kind of like a forgotten player, I think, amongst like the 49ers lore of running backs because of the seasons that those guys end up having. Like, well, like Garner had like that like really like bonkers year. Gore obviously is just loved by the fan base, and you had Roger Craig, but like, man, Garrison Hearst was so good that year. And he was even supposed to play in this game that we're talking about. Like they didn't even know he was going to play. Like he had a hamstring injury coming to this game. They didn't know he was going to play, and was uber effective. And some of that was like defensive game planning. Like I said, like both of these teams really played to stop the pass. They played to stop each other's passing games. And like the defensive calls were dictated by that. So both of these teams allowed the other team to run a little bit on them. But yeah, Garrison Hearst the following week after they win this game, the very first play of the game, breaks his ankle. And like even then without HD TV, like I remember that injury, like being like, oh, like it was gross. He had, if I recall, like a dead bone. He had like a something couldn't grow, and his bone couldn't grow anymore or something. He basically he didn't play for 2 years though. He sat out, he like missed the next 2 years. He missed 2 years of football, then came back, and I want to say he had like 1,500 yards from scrimmage, and I think he won comeback player of the year when he came back. But like he missed 2 full years of playing and came back, and they made the playoffs like after 2 years of not making the playoffs, which was like for me like the first time that they had been bad for like a multi-year run. Because the year after this also is when Steve Young has the Aeneas Williams hit on Monday Night Football, and like it's basically done for his career. So like this was like a huge like transition period, like I said, kind of leading in. But yeah, Garrison Hearst, a real underrated player.
We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Madden is giving it up to Hearst, playing with that bad hammy, and the Niners have had some weird injury luck. Jerry Rice was in the midst of a couple down years, and it was a little more down toward the end of the Niners run compared to his Oakland couple years there. Rice and Young both injured in week 1 the previous season by Warren Sapp.
Yeah.
Takes Jerry Rice a long time to truly.
Remember, he came back from the ACL. I just did a podcast with Stefania Bell, and we talked about like that season. Like Jerry Rice tore his ACL in week 1 and came back that season.
Yeah. And then he got injured worse trying to get back for Montana's ceremony night, right?
He had a fractured kneecap, which is kind of unrelated to the ACL, which is kind of weird. I mean, it could be like maybe I'm not a doctor, so maybe it could have like played a role in it, but like he caught a touchdown and fractured a bone on his kneecap. He caught a touchdown pass on the play. He did it.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. So Jerry Rice, if anyone could manage that, it's Jerry Rice.
But you're right. This was a period for Rice where like you felt the transition, right? And this game, the way it ends was kind of put a cap on that. Like it felt like it was becoming like T.O. was the better player. He was younger. He was just getting better. Like he was getting better every year. Rice was at that point where it's like, dude, like how long is he going to keep playing? And then we found out like he was just pissed off and just like went on like a 2-year run with Oakland. That was like, but yeah, age 40, Jerry Rice, 1,200 yards. I think he had 7 or 8 touchdowns. You know, it was still it, man. And then after that, like he was officially kind of like neutral, slowed down, and we had like the hang on year with like where he got traded to Seattle and then was playing with Denver and then realized it was a wrap.
Terrell Owens and Jerry Rice both just over 1,000 yards that year. Terrell Owens, as you mentioned, by that point, more of the alpha, touchdowns in 8 straight games. But going into halftime, Terrell Owens having a tough day with the fumble. Jerry Rice, no catch yet, shockingly. We see a fair amount more offense in the second half, but it begins with the Packers having a shot to go up 2 scores and pass over the middle. Mark Shimura jumped by Lee Woodall. Next thing you know, another Greg Clark thespian play. Pat Summerall jabs him a bit. You know, great acting, playing the ball and blocker, but then being the receiver of a second touchdown of the game.
Yeah, that was a sick play fake by Steve Young. Even though watching that, you know, definitely sold it.
Yeah.
That Lee Woodall is another one of those, like, you know, when you cheer for a team, like those are the guys you remember, like the Lee Woodalls of the world, that like were better to you than they were the actual, you know, world, because they're part of like a larger sum of defense. But that his interception was set up from the 49ers had brought Charles Haley back, and like he played like 10 downs a game. Like he just like came in like on 3rd down and like rushed the passer, and he got in Favre's face on that one and like kind of forced Favre to probably pull the trigger maybe when he didn't want to, or didn't see Woodall because of the pressure and over the middle of the field. But like, yeah, Charles Haley, the last naked warrior, you know, if you read the Jeff Pearlman book, you know, creating disruption still at his age. And you know, you still had him at the end of his career, and then this was also the final game for Reggie White as a Packer, like towards the end of his career too. So I was like, we still had great defensive names in this game, even though like both of these offenses at this time were so good. I mean, the Packers had Leroy Butler, Gilbert Brown, who was just like a treasure to watch, you know, at this era. Like no one has it had his aesthetic, like just soaking up bodies. The Niners had Merton Hanks, who forced that first fumble on Dorsey Levens, and they had Tim McDonald. But yeah, Merton Hanks was another guy that like maybe gets lost in the sauce of the NFL, but like he had the duck walk. Was just a real fun player, man.
Niners players in their 30s at this point, some of them in their mid 30s, some of those great players on defense you mentioned. How much did it feel like a last Chris Dolman, I think a third 37. Steve Young, 37, still second in the league in rushing. Incredible. Tied going late into the third quarter. And how much does it feel like a last shot to finally get one past on Green Bay?
Yeah, and like I said, it was like a weird point in my life, like growing up with the 49ers. Obviously, they had been so good for my entire life, but at this point, I'm turning 17. Like I'm into like they're not dominating like they're not orbiting my world as much as like when you get older, like you find other things like in life that are important to you at that transitional stage of becoming like a young adult. So like this was kind of like what I remember as like being the end of an era, so to speak. And like obviously that's in hindsight because of what transpired like the year after, like obviously Steve Young getting hurt, and then them moving on from Jerry Rice. Basically I think they won 4 games the year after this. Maybe they won 3 or 4. It was like when Jeff Garcia had to play. It was before Jeff Garcia like became anything. So it was like a big transition period afterwards. But like looking back on it, it's like, yeah, that was basically the cutoff. Like when you factor in my age, like this was it. But I remember watching this game with 2 of my best friends, and we at this age, like you give each other a bunch of shit. Like you always want your friend's team to lose when you're watching them at this age. So you give them hell, and like they're just jab me all the time. It's like it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Here it is. Like the 49ers are choking against the Packers, and it still felt that way during the game into the fourth quarter. I mean, the 49ers, I think they went up 23-20. Favre throws an interception with 5 minutes. You're like, this is the game. It's over. Like, there's no way the Packers can win this now. In the 49ers have the ball on their side of the field, and they go 3 and out and punt from like the 45. And you're like, oh my God, like they can't even put them away. It's just, and Favre hits like the bomb to Corey Bradford, and you're just like, Jesus, here it is, man. Like it's the same. It's like, you just can't. It felt like the previous couple of years. Like it just really felt like they couldn't put them away, man. And felt like it was like the best. Like, are they ever going to be back here again?
You're almost in quicksand against the Packers for whatever reason. The Niners rush it 31 times and pass 32 times to it seemed like to protect Young for that reason. 9 sacks in that earlier matchup this season. Did it seem like Fritz Shermer had your number for whatever reason? And Marty Mornhinweg responds by running a lot. Coaching staff, or who's your favorite?
Yeah, it's interesting. During the broadcast, they actually show Andy Reid one time talking to Favre, and Reid was the quarterback's coach on that team. He wasn't even the offensive the OC. And I think he got the head coaching job the following year. The Packers, I think, hired Ray Rhodes, right? I think they hired Ray Rhodes the next year. And instead of Andy Reid goes to the Eagles, Holmgren goes to Seattle. It's like this huge, shakeup for them. But yeah, I mean, Andy Reid was looking nice and dapper. He was looking thin, a thinner Andy Reid on the sideline there, talking to Favre after one of the plays. Definitely got a kick out of that. But I mean, yeah, the 49ers were in that era. Like when you were able to take away that like rhythm passing game, like that's where that unit kind of struggled at that point, and that was where them being able to run the football in this game was like such a huge point. And then them getting the turnovers, right? Like they also got turnovers in this game. They didn't capitalize them in the same way the Packers did, but like just the fact that they got enough turnovers was huge enough to keep them in this game and not have it snowball away from them to keep them in it.
The Niners able to weather some punches, but they also blow some opportunities.
With the Major League Baseball season underway and the NFL season just weeks away, there is no better time to attend live sporting events. One of my favorite memories watching live sports over the last couple of years was getting to attend a Washington Nationals game along with my good buddy Zach. We picked up those tickets on the Game Time app. It was so straightforward, able to check the view from the specific seats that we would be sitting in. Once we purchased those tickets, travel straight up to the stadium. The tickets are in the app. Straight through the gates to your seat, grab a hot dog, and get ready for the action. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Browsing through the Game Time app is simple. You're able to check out all the latest MLB games that are coming up or other high-profile events. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB or other sporting event tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code ROTOVIZ for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code ROTOVIZ, ROTOVIZ, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Unlike those other Packers games, they're not down big in the fourth quarter like most of the other ones. Playoff losses in 3 straight years. And you mentioned Hearst shaking off Gilbert Brown on a bad hammy, or dropping Sharper in the open field on a tackle attempt. Did it feel like the Niners get bullied by the Packers in the previous 5 losses? And at least in the fourth quarter, even with the game and the balance, did it feel like they had better command in the trenches and physically this time around?
I mean, it did, but like I said, it's still, like, I remember watching this game and thinking, like I said, that they still were squandering opportunities. They said, I mean, when Favre throws that interception, I think with like 5 minutes left, I remember thinking, like, this is it. Like, they're just going to put him away, because they had been running the football, like, set up. We've talked about, and then they go 3 and out. Like they don't even move the football, and they have to punt from their, Packers side of the field, and they never even get in a position to where, like, they could have gone for it. T.O. drops a bad potential first down on that drive, though, on
fourth drop.
Yeah, on an absolute dime by Steve Young, but that was what it felt like when they punted that football, and especially that version of Favre, who's on the 3-year MVP run. Like, it just felt like we're just giving the ball back to Favre. Like, he's gonna pull some, because Favre was always that dude. Like, he would throw picks and like make plays, like the one before, like he underthrows the ball that gets intercepted the drive before that. But like, Favre was always a guy that would be like short. He was always a short memory guy. Like, he was going to keep swinging. You knew he was going to push the football again. And he uncorks one to Corey Bradford where he just throws it out of the stadium, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, like no velocity on the pick. It seemed like confused by, or uncertain by something he saw late there. I don't know, but that one looked ugly on the pick. But then comes right back. They're down 23-20 with a few minutes left. The announcers put up that 10 career fourth quarter comeback wins, but none of them in the final 2 minutes. And this one would get into the final 2 minutes. Probably a lot of that function of the Packers being just in the lead a lot of the time at the end of games. But And then he forgets that last terrible pick. Yeah, as you mentioned, that dime to Corey Bradford, part of the next gen of Packers receivers. But this generation here, Antonio Freeman with the go-ahead touchdown, and Freeman had 2 60-plus yard touchdowns in the regular season meeting between those teams. They not just talked about how the Packers are fixated on stopping Jerry Rice. The Niners are fixated on stopping Antonio Freeman, and yet Freeman gets behind the defense to go up 27-23, under 2 minutes left. Big old celebration, as if there's a lot less time in the game than there is, maybe. Given number one, we're number one to the cameras. Like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, Antonio Freeman was like that dude that just like they couldn't stop for some reason. Like, he just always got it. Didn't matter. Like, they sold out in like the first quarter of that game, took him out, and the Packers started moving him around a lot in that game. They started moving around like in the slot. I think he had like a long catch and run like at the end of the first half, like a real long play. He scored the short touchdown earlier in the game, and just a sick double move on the touchdown. Just like, I don't even remember who it was. It might have been Merton Hanks that he got. Like, it wasn't completely Merton Hanks' fault, I don't think, because it wasn't like completely his assignment, but just a sick double move where he's basically wide open on the play fake. But yeah, I remember thinking that there was time. I remember that the time, like, like I said, at that point I felt like whatever at this point, like, here it's the same shit again. But I remember thinking like, well, at least they let him score quick. Yeah. Like, that's like what I remember thinking. Like, at least they let him score fast.
Yeah, it looks like the slant on Freeman, and then Sluggo back shoulder, no one's home. But it's at least they didn't move the chains again and run this clock down to inside 30 seconds before scoring. What Spagnuolo throws at teams or against the Bills in last year's playoffs is like, all right, if you hit this downfield, fine, but you're not gonna beat us by moving the chains until the clock's out and then scoring. So Niners get the ball back. Steve Young, is your heart in your stomach as Steve Young goes back out there? So far, a really tough day for him, Rice, and Owens. You're getting to midfield on like throws to Stokes and the fullback.
JJ Stokes, the other dude that we didn't, who's famous for getting spit on by Bill Romanowski. But
Yeah.
JJ Stokes, he was like kind of like the glue guy this drive. I think he caught 2 or 3 passes in a row. You say you get a little bit of that off coverage. What's interesting about the Rice thing is like they weren't forcing the ball to Rice either. Like it was just one of these things. Like I just don't think of the natural ebb and flow of the offense, the way they were running the football, like the opportunities were finding him. And then he finally got a chance this drive, catches his first pass, and basically brings instant replay back. Jerry Rice like single-handedly brought instant replay back, and Madden sharply called that too when that happened. That he was like, "That's going to pass this year finally. That's going to be He's like, this is going to be like the final nail. Like that's going to push this thing through." And it did. The next year they voted to have it reinstituted to a degree. Packers fans definitely will highlight this play forever. Like it was a clear fumble. There's just no way it wasn't. They were robbed. The game's over here on this play. Obviously, they do have to continue to play, but man, it was a clear fumble, dude. Like I don't even know I don't even know how they blew this day. Like it was even close. Like there wasn't. I don't even know. Like there's nothing close on this replay at all. And granted, we see things in fast time, but there's like Jerry's like not even close to going down.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Between that and the next play, which on the broadcast
should have been intercepted,
it looks like an interception to me on the broadcast view live, but the refs made a great call on seeing it hit the ground and get the other replay angle. The
also, JJ Stokes underrated that play. JJ Stokes kind of prevented that from being intercepted.
Oh yeah, pulled it was a Newsome, I think, back just enough to get him to lose his grip on that ball long enough where then it hits the ground. How hard is it for you to watch at this point? You have enough time for maybe 1-2 plays, depending on whether you're catching bounds or not. You're still about 30 yards out. Are you pacing? Can you sit still to white knuckle this out?
Yeah, I remember this, and I watched this with 2 of my friends. We were in my bedroom at the time, watching this on like this, 19-inch, TV that probably somehow still weighed 80 pounds. Like, remember every TV, it didn't matter what it was, like, they were just all heavy back then. And no matter what, if you wanted to move them, they were like sharp underneath them. Like they were like, they had like weird edges and stuff. But like, I remember watching it and, just thinking like, man, just like anything happened, just please, my buddies are giving me grief because obviously, like I grew up, like I said, Jerry Rice was my favorite player. They're telling me how washed Jerry Rice is, that he just fumbled, he should have fumbled away the season. I'm not feeling good, and like that play just kind of happens, and like it's just so poetic, and the way like it's such a good story thing for T.O. And granted, like what happened for T.O. from his point of his career probably takes away some of the lore for some people. Because of the notion that he was a selfish player, like towards later points of his career, and had the quotes like it's about me, like I love me some me, and quotes like that. But like you literally saw in Madden and Summer while we're on it, like this dude like played a horrendous game. Like, and like we've all played at least on some base level of sports. Like the dude like had to be feeling it. Like I said, the drive before they could basically go ice this game. He drops a 3rd down pass. They have to punt. It's his 4th drop of the game. He has to be feeling like, dude, this is like the worst game I've ever played. Like we're, 8 seconds away from potentially losing. And a game like I could have made all these plays or like whatever. And he catches that touchdown, and you just see like all the eruption of emotion like come from him. And it's like hard not to get involved with the way Madden and Summer all even call it. If you're not a 49ers fan, or even if you're a Packers fan, like maybe you can go back and look at it now, like less salty because of the Rice thing, because that play should have happened. But you just appreciate like as a human being going through that, like in that moment, like what that probably meant to him, catching that pass. And it was, like I said, it was just real poetic because you saw it all. Like that emotion there is the human being like triumphing over like the worst. There were like worst situation of the moment, and it was just really cool. And it's still something like that's an image that will forever, I think live in like NFL history.
An amazing thing that we got Madden and Summerall on this. You got basically the Hans Zimmer score for your film, building up the tension. Steve Young stumbles.
Yeah, he almost he steps in the center.
Summerall right on top of it, stumbles. Are you getting trash talk with your friends mid play, or are they letting it?
No, I mean, I don't remember in play being on it, but just like, yeah, it was like the whole time I was getting, like, ever since the Rice like fumble and like the whole game I was getting it. But that's how we were. That's how buddies were, when you watch the games. I had a buddy that grew up a Dolphins fan, so like he always got it from us, like the Marino stuff. Always got the Marino, the playoff Marino stuff from us. But I mean, that dude, because that play shouldn't work.
Yeah.
That like this play shouldn't work with the coverage the Packers are running and the play it's running. Like, it's literally a perfect throw and a perfect catch. It's between like 5 guys. T.O. gets smoked on the play. Like, he gets absolutely drilled. Like, he's in a car crash. And like, it just shouldn't work. It was just, and Steve Young at that point of his career, like, wasn't known for, like, he was more of a timing quarterback and a rhythm quarterback. Like, he throws an absolute seed, like an absolute rocket. Like, this thing must like be like 8 feet off the ground the whole way. Like I said, it was just perfect, man. I just remember that play forever, man. It's like, and obviously a lot of people will, but just in context of, like I said, what it ends up meaning to me now, more that like I've gotten older, being exposed like within the industry where we are now. Like, I'm not as much as a fan nearly as I was, back then. And then just kind of like, it was like the sun setting on all of that for me. It was just like my last like moment, my last true moment as like all in.
Post-game interview, as you mentioned, Terrell Owens, draws some ire for talking about himself. But at the end of this game, he talks about, Steve Young, me and Steve Young like had type of coverage. It'd be an option. He put it right in the money, and my head was in the game because my teammates believed in me and kept coming to me and helped me keep my confidence up and that belief in me. This is an all-timer, like, post-game interview as well. On top of that, with all the emotion, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, like I said, Matt and Summerall are on it. They just bring it up, like, just how, like I said, it's the overcoming just your worst performance, right? Like, your worst day, and then having it end like, and this is why you do it, man. It's why you, like, they literally keep telling you, keep plugging away. There's always another player in life in general. Like, why you keep your head down. It's why you keep moving. It's why you always stay positive, because you never know when you can turn something around, right? And it was just great, man. It was, it was a young player. And like I said, and this also, like, at this time, like, when this kind of cements it, right? Like, this is a couple plays after Rice has the fumble, and then T.O. catches the game-winning touchdown. And I'll give Jerry some credit, because, probably internally, Jerry had, all wide receivers have that selfish mentality. Like, Jerry probably wishes it was him. I mean, we're also on a first name basis. I'm just gonna keep calling him Jerry. But Rice is one of the first people on top of T.O. when he makes the catch. Like, and again, Jerry Rice probably at that time was a little bit surly, in a sense, like that he was he was no longer the dude, right? Like, that probably upset him a little bit. And then infamously, if you remember, like, I think 2 years after this, T.O. breaks the receiving record on Jerry Rice Day. He has the 20 reception game against the Bears on Jerry Rice Day, which I know pissed Jerry Rice off. Like, I think Mariucci's talked about it. But even in the context of like the team setting where you're trying to win this game and what it means to you, even Jerry Rice having the day he had, one catch and almost blowing the game and what should have been a fumble, is one of the first dudes on top of T.O. celebrating, and understand, like, so it's like you have all these layers to it that just kind of comes together. It was great, man. Even rewatching it, and I know that, like, Packers fans, like you said, or even if you're like, in context of like none of this should have happened, it still was great.
This has been another episode of Remember That Game. Please rate, review, subscribe, and check out more episodes.